Hey guys, Booligan here with Booligan Shooting Sports. Well, the day we've been waiting for has come out, and the ATF has released their proposed rule change on braces and what criteria they're using to determine whether a braced pistol becomes a short barreled rifle. As you can expect, it is completely ridiculous, completely able to be torn apart in the comment section, which all of you guys should be doing once it is opened up for comments. And I highly recommend that all of you read it. To do so, I've included a link to it in the description of this video. It is a PDF, so PDF warning there, but read this. This is important stuff. One of the important things that they're creating in this is ATF worksheet 4999, this little guy right here, which is currently on the side of the screen as well. In short, what the gist of this does is there are certain criteria that must be hit and also that must not be exceeded in order for a firearm pistol to be considered a braced pistol and not a SBR. What I would like to do briefly is go over some of this as sort of a too long didn't read, even though you should be reading this anyways, and talking about my points that I'm going to be making in my comment. This is going to be a bit of a long video. I have a 1,700 word comment, which I think actually exceeds their maximum allowable, but we'll see how I sort of trim it down. First and foremost, how this works is a section by section. You have to complete the first section. If you complete the first section, then you can move on to the next. If you are unable to complete the first section, you do not pass go. You have to pay them $200 or don't, or throw your brace away and not get paid for it, or do not comply and risk becoming a felon. And these are great options. So anyways, the first section, the weapon must weigh at least 64 ounces. That's 4 pounds. That's pretty heavy. Their thinking behind this is we don't want people putting braces on things like Glocks or other relatively lightweight handguns. If it doesn't weigh at least 64 ounces, you cannot have a brace on it. Period. Dot. Next, it must have an overall length between 12 and 26 inches. So if it's too small, you can't have a brace because you can easily hold it. If it's too big, you can't have a brace because it would be too hard to hold. Even though a brace is supposed to make it easier to handle if it's long anyways. It also can't be too heavy. It can't exceed 7 pounds. These numbers are completely arbitrary. We'll discuss that in a moment. So if you are putting this on a firearm that is big and heavy, you may now proceed to the next section. The next section is about the accessory characteristics. It's actually about the brace accessory itself. First, and how it works, if you look on the screen, you'll notice there's a little point value here. You cannot exceed 4 points at all, period. Dot. So is the brace not based on a known stock design? 0 points. Incorporates a shoulder stock design features, 1 point. Based on a known shoulder stock design, 2 points, etc., etc. Rear surface area. Does it incorporate features to prevent the use? Is it a minimized rear surface lacking features to discourage shouldering? And as you can see, there's different point totals assigned to this. I'm not going to read through every single one of them because I have to do that next. So this section cannot exceed 4 points. Have you gone through this with the brace that you're using? Does it exceed 4 points? Well, congratulations, you cannot use that brace. If it doesn't exceed 3 points, then you get to go on to page 2, which is talking about the actual configuration of the weapon. Again, you have 4 whole new points to deal with here, and you cannot meet or exceed that 4 points. First, they talk about length of pull. Previously, they said anything up to 13.5 inches is good. Now, say you have a 12.5 inch length of pull, you just got slapped with 3 points. Better hope you don't have flip up sights on your pistol because you're now a felon. We'll get to that. Attachment method, it goes over different attachment methods. Realistically, this will eliminate any like SB Tactical, SBA3, SBA4, those are gone completely. Those are completely disallowed by this because, well, first off, they disallow it for several features on Section 2. And then on the actual configuration, an SBA2, or excuse me, an SBA3 gets 3 points for being length of pull 12.5 to 13.5, and adjustable rifle buffer tube is a point. That's your 4 points. You're done. You can't continue with that anymore. So the SBA3, SBA4, those don't exist anymore under this new ruling. They go over all of that in detail. But what I would like to do is to go ahead and pull up my comment section here. I'm going to have it on the other side of the screen. Actually, do you know, I think we can put it right here. I'll put it on this side of the screen. So what the purpose of the comment period is to pick apart specific sections of this. I go through it section by section. And as I said, I have a 1,700 word document here. Sorry, you're going to be hearing a lot of my voice. First and foremost, picking apart the prerequisites. The reasons that these specific weights were chosen are not explained clearly enough in the proposed rule. A long but under 64-ounce pistol may be difficult for a handicapped shooter to use properly, requiring the use of a brace. Perhaps the shooter has limited grip strength in which to hold an otherwise lightweight gun, necessitating the use of a brace to properly hold and operate it. Should this person be forced to use too heavy of a firearm that they can't properly control? B. Weight with accessories removed. Are you considering the brace as an operational or non-operational accessory? This is not clear in the proposed rule. This is a minor one. They're just going to say it is an accessory and it has to be removed for the weight, but I got to put it in there. Arbitrary length determination. Again, this length measured with all non-operational accessories removed. What is determined to be a non-operational accessory and what is an operational accessory? I'm going to compound on this a little bit more, but also just discussing why these lengths are just super, super, super arbitrary. Why is 12 inches the magic number for this? But I need to get my thoughts on page a little bit better than that. So now that tackles the prerequisites. Now let's talk about the brace accessory characteristics. Part 1, accessory design. What is the standard to determine whether a stabilizing brace is not based on a known shoulder stock design? What are the exact factors to determine whether it is based on a known design or not? Is it cosmetic or is it functional? Who makes the determination whether a brace is based on a known shoulder stock design? They provide some examples in this, particularly with an SBA3 and with a shockwave blade. So the examples provided rule out almost every brace on the market using features known to be on a stock, such as the extremely overreaching incorporating a hardened polymer type material. They were picking apart an SBA3 and said that it incorporated a sling mount and it was incorporating a hardened polymer type material. So it's made of plastic. Apparently that means it is designed on a known shoulder stock design and therefore gets hit with like a 2-point penalty. Like I said, that is the vast majority of braces on the market. Adding a sling attachment point is also a stock-like feature in that exhibit. Yet, in Exhibit C with a shockwave blade type brace accessory, both made of a hardened polymer type material and with a sling attachment point, it is not penalized as being based on a known shoulder stock design. Your examples aren't applied consistently. How can a designer plan for your arbitrary determinations? Section 2, rear surface area. Vague descriptions are used in the proposed rule. What exactly is the surface area permitted in each of these levels? Using descriptors of minimized or useful are vague and cannot possibly be accommodated to when designing an accessory. What is useful for one person may be counted as minimized for another. I'll get to the rear surface area so you can read it. Minimized for another. Without clear objective measurements here, compliance is impossible. What all are considered a feature to prevent the use of a shouldering device, i.e. they reference a quick detach sling attachment port at the rear of the stabilizing brace as a benefit, but a QD port on the side is a penalty. Would a simple sling loop extending 1 millimeter from the rear of the brace, breaking up the solid rearmost portion suffice? Clear guidelines must be provided. It is completely vague what they're putting out. And that's, I hate to say, kind of what we want right now. We want them to be a little bit vague in this because then we can pick it apart in the comment period. Adjustability. Have that section up here. Is adjustability only determined with front and back movement, i.e. to increase or decrease the length of pull? Or is the ability to fold the entire brace to the side out of the functional plane when not deployed for use counted as being adjustable? Again, this is vague and unable to plan for with the current language. Part 3 is going to be about the configuration of the weapon. We're going to go through some of this. I didn't talk too much about whether it's a fin type or a counterbalance or a cuff type. I don't have a ton of thoughts on that because realistically, they do kind of get into good detail about that. However, they do include stuff like cuff type designs that fail to wrap around the arm. Whose arm? My arm? I've got pretty chunky arms. A child's arm? Children shoot guns. A bodybuilder's arm. Again, this doesn't make much sense and needs to be picked apart and commented on. So part 3, configuration of the weapon. So this is on the second page of that form 4999. 1, length of pull. The previous maximum allowed length of pull of 13.5 inches was a clear, easily followed guideline. They said don't exceed 13.5, fine. The new version penalizes people with different biology, forearm length, joint strength, etc. This should be simply 0 points for any length of pull under 13.5 and an automatic fail or 4 points for any length of pull over 13.5 inches. That's what was applied before. If they're going to continue to apply something, that should just keep being applied as it sits. If someone needs a brace with a maximum length of pull of 13.0 inches due to their arm length or another biological feature that they can't control, they are penalized harshly on this worksheet. That is an automatic 3 points. They're only allowed 1 more point, and the thing is banned. Attachment method. Confusion remains here. For example, a hypothetical 65-ounce, 12.5-inch pistol-type firearm with a rear Picatinny mount built into the frame or chassis of the gun of the firearm. The pistol brace has a side-folding Picatinny mount-equipped hinge to facilitate mounting between the brace arm and the body. This hinge is required for the use of the brace itself to allow the firearm to be used both with the brace deployed and with the brace folded to the side. The hinge is not unnecessarily long to be considered a folding adapter extending the length of pull. Would this be counted against its total score? The worksheet and proposed rule is vague and doesn't have the possibility included, meaning it is impossible to plan for this eventuality. In addition, attachment method creates an unusable aim point, slant, is used. It is again vague and inconsistent with the firearm in proper use. On the above referenced firearm, the pistol-style sights are impossible to properly aim with the brace strapped to the shooter's arm if the rear of the chassis doesn't have a 5-degree downward slant. This is in practice. This is an actual firearm that I have. You cannot have the brace coming straight out the back and properly aim with it because the way that the firearm is shaped. If the rear of the chassis doesn't have a 5-degree downward slant and the brace arm itself having a further 5-degree slant, providing a combined 10-degree slant when deployed and in proper use. The brace has been designed accordingly to provide the proper arm strap engagement angle in this use. Would this be penalized, as the only way to properly aim this handgun is with that slant-mounted brace? How many degrees are too many? Is a 1-degree slope on the mount enough to be penalized? They don't explain that. They need to explain that. They're penalizing you for using elastic material strap. In order to allow the braced firearm to be shot by a variety of shooters, elastic material is sometimes used so that the entire strap doesn't need to be reconfigured from shooter to shooter. Having this be a penalty is ridiculous and penalizes shooters of different sizes and abilities. The ability to easily adjust the brace to fit the shooter is a requirement, given that the shooter may, for example, only have one functional hand. Elastic makes this simple in most cases necessary in others, and having this be a penalty could be considered a violation of the ADA. In addition, the qualifier of the strap being too short to function is extremely vague, as different forearm sizes exists. What may fit on a child shooter will obviously not fit on a bodybuilder, yet a small strap may be considered perfectly functional depending on the shooter. Do you intend to measure the forearm of the firearm owner to issue a maximum or minimum allowable strap for that specific person? What if they lose weight or gain muscle? This is vague, unenforceable, and unable to plan for in design. I have a whole subsection on peripheral accessories. Peripheral accessories, they have a whole list of things that you get penalized for putting on a gun, on a pistol with a brace. A. So this is section 4, part A. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. There we go. Presence of a hand stop. Sporadic, incidental, and situational, their favorite words, use of two hands while shooting a pistol-type firearm is a common occurrence. Having a device in place to prevent injury to a shooter by accidentally putting their hand in front of the muzzle should not be penalized. A hand stop is a safety feature and should not be penalized. Certain devices that are cosmetically identical to hand stops but are marketed as barricade rests exist to brace the firearm against a barricade in practical shooting. Would this device be penalized as well? The presence of rifle-type sights. What are considered rifle-type sights? The worksheet states backup/flip-up sights. But what about the existing carry handle sights on an AR-type pistol, which are functionally identical to backup sights? What about diopter-type peep sights commonly found on competition shooting pistols, which are also commonly found on competition shooting rifles? What about AK-style tangent sights, which come from the factory on some Browning-style pistols? Like with Part 2, Section 1, who makes the arbitrary decision on what is considered a rifle-type sight, when no such classification actually exists, and sights ranging from simple notch and post up to high-precision diopter sights exist on both rifles and pistols? There's no such thing as a rifle iron sight. You can have the same type of sights on both a rifle and a pistol. They talk about long eye relief and short eye relief scopes. What is the allowable eye relief for optics? The worksheet states that it is for sights with eye relief incompatible with one-handed fire. People have different arm lengths. What may be perfect for one shooter may be too short or too long for another. What is limited eye relief? A scope that is branded and sold as a pistol scope may have an 18-inch eye relief scope. It may be 12, it may be 20, it may be 8 inches. Different shooting postures exist, and therefore different scope eye relief exists. Which of these are allowable without penalty, despite the fact that they are all marketed as pistol scopes? Without a specific guideline for a maximum allowable eye relief, this is vague and impossible to plan for. And lastly, they talk about the presence of a bipod or a monopod. Several hunting or target type pistols come with a bipod as a factory addition. My Ruger Charger came with a bipod. This can help shooters of all ages and abilities shoot safely, allowing a static support on what may be a heavy firearm. I cannot fathom why this is a penalized feature. There's a lot more to this, but I'll kind of go over my wrap up. Overall, this proposed rule does not serve to reduce violent crime. It will, however, lead to an increase in accidental injuries or deaths due to making previously safe firearms objectively worse at actually being controllable and able to hit their target. This proposed rule will, at best, lead to literally millions of gun owners becoming felons due to having their firearms in a previously allowed configuration that will change overnight due to extremely vague, improperly defined, and arbitrary configuration rules. At worst, this proposed rule will be a disaster for safety. While there are an extremely low number of deaths attributed to brace-equipped firearms currently, an extremely low number of intentional deaths. Making firearms less stable for shooting is a massive range safety issue. Contrary to media belief, the vast majority of guns are fired safely at the range by the hundreds of millions of responsible gun owners. This is where guns are used. Millions of these firearms are brace-equipped pistols. Their estimate is 1.2 million. Making them less stable, accurate, and controllable while shooting will lead to accidental injuries and deaths, far exceeding the number purported to be intentionally caused by them. The proposed solutions to this rule change are equally unreasonable. An owner may remove and destroy or discard of their brace-type accessory, an item which was legally purchased for use, previously approved by the ATF, without compensation for money spent on the approved item. By the ATF's own estimations, this will rob lawful firearm owners of approximately $283 million. They also give an option: just file for a Form 1 SBR tax stamp, but they will charge you for it in full. There is no grandfathering or financial offset in this proposed rule change. And if an owner that does wish to remain legally compliant, if every single brace owner does this, it will cost lawful gun owners approximately $240 million. Read the proposed rule. Look at the worksheet. Look at firearms that you own and see where they sit on the worksheet. Do you own a firearm that will be considered a felony to own in a few months if this gets passed and if they pass this rule as written? Whether you do or do not, it is your responsibility as a gun owner to comment on this. This is important. Realistically, this is what we were waiting for. Hopefully you commented on the firearm receiver reclassification proposed rule change. This is important stuff. We have beat this before. We beat this with green tip. We beat this the first time they tried to come after braces, and we can do it again. But you need to sit down and you need to make clear, concise. I missed the concise part because, again, I have 1,700 words here talking about it. But you need to make your voice heard once the comment period opens up. I will be posting an updated video once that comment period opens, asking everybody to watch this video, to read it. And I will also have a copy of my comment available. You cannot copy and paste my comment. They will get rid of all of them if they're copy and pasted. But personally, in my opinion, I think I made some okay points here. Make your own points. Feel free to, follow along with some of mine if you think that they were a good idea. But this is just my opinion on why this stuff, why this rule change is completely ridiculous. So this was entirely too long of a video, but I do want to thank you guys for sticking through it. Read this, get educated, see some of their examples on what would be approved and what would not be approved, and get out there and make the comment once the comment period opens. Thank you for watching.